This week's episode of Aeolian Sands is strictly for 21s and over.
Welcome back to another episode of Aeolian Sands. Doing things a bit different this time. I am introducing this episode, and I have the great honor of interviewing my wonderful co-founder. This episode is going to be really insightful. We, as a lot of you may or may not know, besides this podcast, Aeolian Sands, we regularly do a lot of research reports. We have another really exciting one about an emerging industry that's set to hit the shores of the UAE imminently. So before we get into this, I really want to answer the question, why am I interviewing John for this report? Well, there are a few things that you don't know about John. So John, kindly tell me what really inspired you actually to author this report, given the news about this specific industry that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about gaming, and there's different terms for this in different parts of the world. Gaming's the term that's been used by people here in the UAE, and it relates to what in other territories or jurisdictions might be betting or gambling, whatever you want to call it, wagering in the US. And essentially, I come from a background where this has been a major part of my life for a long time. So when I was at university, I worked in a betting shop in the UK. When I left university, I went to work for Sky Sports, and I specialised and crafted a niche really in horse racing, which is obviously very closely related with betting. After that, I went to work for William Hill, which is one of the world's biggest betting companies. It's now part of Evoke PLC. And then obviously coming over here, 8 years ago, there's no betting. And it was a complete transformation in terms of what my career had been up until that point. But then going into more marketing, public relations, creative stunts and activations over here in the Middle East. But that skill base, that knowledge still remains. And I've obviously actively followed the industry for a long, long time. And now with the UAE introducing gaming, and they brought in the General Commercial Gaming Regulatory Authority, bit of a mouthful, GCGRA if you like. They have been tasked with building regulatory frameworks to make sure that gaming, when it comes into the UAE, is well regulated, and obviously the right protections are in place for people who might bet.
All right, okay. So, before we get started, again, I was born, raised, lived in this part of the world pretty much most of my life. Although the UAE, or specifically Dubai, is very international, you have nationalities from all over the world who may be familiar with gaming or gambling or betting. Can you just in very simple terms, explain what is gambling / betting? Is it chance? Is it skill-based? What's the difference between, for example, lottery and roulette?
Yeah, so I guess the first part is that where you've got an element of chance or skill, there are subtle differences between these things. So in the UAE, for example, they have had things like raffles.
Dubai duty free.
Exactly. You go through the airport, win a kilo of gold, write your name in, and win a prize. Now, obviously, that is whoever's drawn out of the hat, and often they combine it with things like everybody's a winner.
So that's chance.
So that aspect is, you're just putting your name into something. You're not trying to use your skill or influence the result. All you're putting is your name in the hat. The difference between that and something like roulette or betting on a horse race is you're actively choosing a specific result that may come out. It's a subtle difference, it really is. But it's something which has been very strictly enforced in the UAE to this point. Now we're starting to see elements of lotteries, for example. So with a lottery, you would select specific numbers that would then be drawn out.
Okay, so is that now considered skill?
Yes. So this is very much the differentiator is something like a raffle is there's no skill involved. you're just putting your name in.
In a ticket.
Whereas a lottery, roulette, putting on specific numbers. Let's say it's blackjack, you're suddenly getting a little bit more skilled because, especially if you're into your counting of these things, you might be able to get a sort of advantage.
Yeah.
You're playing poker against somebody else. You're deliberately trying to gain an advantage over another person. You're selecting something in a horse race, my specialist area of expertise. I'm looking through the form lines. I'm understanding what the likelihood of that horse winning is versus a not. Maybe I've heard that this horse has been training really well. As with the Dubai World Cup, every day of the week I was going to the track and looking at those horses. So I had a natural advantage. And obviously,
the same could be said for football, for cricket, for
anything,
the NFL, etc.
Anything, and that is where there is that difference between something that's just pure chance and luck versus where somebody may start to get an advantage or an edge in different manners, and that's when you enter the world of gaming.
Okay, very interesting. Well, I have a lot of questions, and I think we're going to touch on multiple aspects, but I think let's start with the first aspect, and it's a good segue from what you just described, the consumer insights.
Yeah.
And I know because you have experience of working within the industry, any example that you can give of the psychology of gaming? Like these are just stats, right? Quantitative. But are there is there a lottery number that's the most picked always? Not by the winning number, but just because of a consumer. Like they always pick their birthday. I tried the lottery just last week just to see what the experience was like, and I ended up picking basically mine and my family members' birthday days. That's what I picked.
That would be probably the most common of these things. Obviously, lucky
because they think it's lucky.
Yeah, obviously lucky numbers. Lucky number 7 in perhaps Western markets. Number 8 in Far East Asian markets.
Yeah.
So there's definitely those kind of numbers. And then, I think some of the most common ways that somebody might choose lottery would be somebody's birthday, children's birthday, date you got married, all these kind of things. And I mean, I'm sure that there's research into these specifics, but definitely they do have a sway on which numbers are chosen as you individually. When you spread that out over the course of perhaps 1 million people playing a lottery, there's probably not that much difference. But there will be certain numbers which, in some cultures they will avoid. So something like number 13, maybe that doesn't get played because somebody sees that their lottery ticket's unlucky because it's number 13.
4 in Asian countries, yeah.
And then there's other markets, and I'm thinking about different markets in North America where actually you don't select the lottery ticket. So they will just assign you numbers. So you'll just go pay for your ticket.
They're randomly assigned.
And it's randomly assigned. So actually there is no skill level involved with selecting your numbers in those kind of lotteries.
Interesting. Okay, so we conducted a survey representative of the UAE population with our partners at YouGov. We do this regularly, not only for our own internal research, but also on behalf of customers. So the duke+mir survey on gaming in the UAE found that nearly half of the respondents said that they'd consider raffles or prize draws. So in the context of the UAE, what do you think makes that so appealing? Besides the fact you've described Dubai Duty Free's been there for a very long time. You've seen multiple different formats with regards to getting people to participate in these lotteries or raffle draws. So what do you think is why is that such a good on-ramp for other gaming activities within the UAE?
Yeah, look, I mean, just to start off with as well, it is worth pointing out, as far as we're aware, this is the first gaming report that's ever been done in the UAE. And we're super excited about the results that we found from it, because they have a tangible impact upon our understanding of what people are going to be getting involved with within the shores of the UAE. Now, obviously, there are going to be lots and lots of tourists, millions of tourists potentially coming in to Ras Al Khaimah, to wherever else we're going to see casinos across the UAE. But certainly within the market itself, how are people's behaviours going to be changed? And we're super excited by these results. When it comes to why is the lottery the place where people might enter, or raffles, It goes down to start with in terms of skill level. Firstly, it's easy. It's very easy to take part in a lottery or a raffle. In the instance of a raffle, pop your name in a hat. In the instance of a lottery, pick a few numbers. Generally as well with lotteries, they're usually low cost in terms of entry. So you might be spending in the UK, I think it's £2 now for a lottery ticket. When it comes to the UAE lottery here, they're just starting from a few dirhams upwards. And then there's things like scratch cards as well. Again, they're very simple to understand. They don't require a deep level of knowledge or skill. They just require an authentication, a verification of age, as it is with the UAE lottery, and then the ability to participate, having submitted that verification procedure. So I guess ease is a key part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's called the Lottery AE, right?
Yeah, UAE lottery, yeah.
Correct. And just, after we had done this report, it was the first time I've ever signed up to any kind of gaming activity. I just want to actually see what the experience would be. And I have to say it was very, very professional, very trustworthy. They used, and we know this because we work within the tech space, they used e-verification on the spot. And then I bought I bought 4 tickets for the big lottery, which I felt as an experience I selected the numbers, but I felt it was underwhelming because now I bought the ticket and I have to wait for the draw day, right? But then they had a bunch of other little mini games in there, which were like 5 dirhams, 10 dirhams, which is kind of your scratch, or, all 3 line up, or you pull a lever and it spins. So it was quite a fun digital experience. So do you think that there's an opportunity for, obviously we saw e-verification. What about people who are developing these games? Are there any operators currently in the UAE, or what do you think the size of the opportunity for, let's say, a gaming studio out of Europe or America to really kind of build localized games here?
Yeah, look, I think it's massive. When you actually look at the way things are formulated, the first thing I would say is that I would be very surprised if we see games developed in Arabic. That's the first thing I would say.
But that's, I think,
culturally,
because of the regulation.
Regulation-wise and culturally, I just don't see that being something that's done, certainly onshore and regulated-wise, maybe, in other kind of more grey area markets. But here, I just don't see that being something that's brought in as a priority, particularly with the current regulations that are in place by the GCGRA, which means that you can't do anything in Arabic. It's just it's a strict rule at the moment. How things change in years to come, I'm not sure, but right now, no way. When it comes to the type of games that people are playing, when you look at different operators around the world, they integrate third-party games and third-party developed games into things. They even do things like live shows, which may or may not be part of that particular online site. They might have partners which they work with to deliver, let's say, for example, a blackjack experience. So I think from a games developer perspective, it's not just even here's the game, there you go. It's also potentially here's the game, and we're going to operate it for you in conjunction with maybe an officially regulated party here in the UAE. I suspect that they will be very strict regulations and licensing when it comes to which parties can work with people here. But definitely in terms of games development. And then I also see a segue or a link to esports, gaming, things like this, which are super popular in this region.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a small example. But let's say, for example, you're watching FIFA with your friends. Super popular. You're playing with your mates, something along those lines. Now, that opportunity to perhaps have peer-to-peer, so the opportunity to have a wager with your friends when you're playing a game, the opportunities for this are endless. Yeah. People far prefer beating their friend they care more about it.
Yeah.
So those kind of
And
aspects.
it's less about the wager; it's more about just the fun experience of having something on the line.
Exactly. And, to take it to a next level, it might be that these things are linked to some form of tokenization.
Yeah.
We've seen the popularity of crypto in this part of the world. 30% of the people in the UAE own some or hold some form of crypto asset. When you've got in-app gaming, we've got GTA 6 coming down the line. Well, maybe someday. But when you look at a game like that, the opportunity to earn credits in that game, you can almost imagine an in-game casino for these things.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of different aspects that can be played out because we're now entering this kind of weird Web 2.5 world where we're not quite at Web 3 in a lot of areas.
The hype of Web3 has kind of fizzled.
Fizzled, or people have realized the complexity that comes with having 3D environments and all these kind of things. And we're entering that kind of 2.5 aspect of things. And we're, it's almost the halfway house between Web 2 and Web 3. And I can imagine that there's going to be a lot of things which are going to help to develop things and get towards a point where we have fully 3D immersive worlds.
All right. Speaking of sports or football, there were some interesting demographic differences. The report or the results showed that younger adults 18 to 24 were more interested in sports betting compared to those 45 years and older. While the reverse is true for raffles or games like bingo. Now, again, pardon my kind of stereotypical assumption, but when I think of bingo, I think of a big hall, very old ladies, men, women. That's typically the activity that they do. So why do you think sports betting, why do you think some sports appeal to younger people, some gaming activities appeal more to younger people versus older people, at least in your experience from the UK?
Yeah, so I think certain activities are associated with entertainment. So there are different types of bettor or wagerer, if you like. There are people who do it for entertainment's sake. So let's say they go to a live event and they use gaming or sports betting as an outlet. So much like you might go to watch a boxing match, and it's just part of like the experience.
You buy merch.
Yeah, you buy merch, you go and buy your popcorn, and you have a few quid on whoever's going to win the heavyweight title bout. Okay. So it's that kind of casual event-based or entertainment-based wager. Then there's somebody who thinks that they're super skilled. Somebody who thinks they've got an edge in some manner, or they've been watching an awful lot of Instagram videos that tell them how to count cards or what have you.
Or they have a tip.
Yeah, somebody who thinks they've got some form of edge and they're using an element of skill to win something. There's the social side. So as I said, you might have, let's say, for example, a poker game where you've got a group of friends who are participating in an activity, and they're all taking part because they want to win a social environment, or they're just in it for experience. There are different reasons why people are betting. Some people are emotional bettors. So as an example of that, they might see, that name, that's my granddad's name. I'm going to bet on that horse. An example of those kind of examples which strike really well. One of the biggest horse races in the world is the Grand National, which is run at Aintree in Liverpool every year, and a lot of that is down to people picking names of the horses, and it has a completely different betting pattern when they're creating the odds. So they'll set the markets, and then when it comes to race time, or they'll go completely haywire because the horse which has got absolutely no chance of winning becomes the favourite because it's got the name John's number 7 or something, and everyone's like, well, I'm going to go on that because my name's John. And it changes everything. Most horse races every week, they're not driven by the name of the horse. But that's an example of where somebody's emotionally involved with something versus the logical element of reading into the form of that football team and, oh yeah, they've scored whatever number of goals, and they haven't converted all their chances, but if they'd converted a couple more of them, they would have scored 2 goals in that game against Liverpool. All these things where, frankly, you don't know as much as the professional people within the industry, and you're very unlikely to win, certainly in the long term.
Oh, that's really interesting. I think just one more thing on the consumer insights, right? And this is kind of a hot take question for you. So approximately 1/4 of UAE residents were open to online betting, so an online experience.
Yeah.
And similarly, 1/4 of the UAE population is interested in visiting a casino in person, right?
Yeah, I think that's huge.
And now, given what you've said about the 4, I'm sure there are more, but the 4 kind of personalities, right? What do you think, given that the first legal regulated venue is going to open in Ras Al Khaimah, operated by the Win in 2027, what do you think is going to be the most likely type of visitor?
Well, I mean, first of all, you've got to take into the fact that they're building an entertainment experience. It is not just a casino. The casino is going to be somewhere approaching one of the world's top 10 or top 15 biggest casino floors. And, that is obviously going to be a huge draw for people. We worked out what the kind of, as the crow flies or go in different directions, what the nearest place was for people. And there's a catchment area of something like 150 to 200 million people that Ras Al Khaimah will be their closest casino. So it's huge, it's massive. It's like 3x the population of the UK. So there's a huge number of people where they're going to be drawn for that alone. But then there is the entertainment experiences. They're going to put on shows. I'm sure we're going to see world-class acts coming and staying there. We'll probably see residencies like you've seen with Britney Spears and Elton John in Las Vegas.
Restaurants, Michelin star restaurants, yeah.
Really high-quality restaurants, beach clubs. People are going to Ras Al Khaimah anyway. That's the thing that draws in my kind of attention, is that as opposed to somewhere like Vegas where it was just a plod in the desert, right? Yeah. Until they had casinos. People already want to go to Ras Al Khaimah, and it already has a lot of visitors every single year who want to come for the beaches, the mountains, the experiences you can have in Ras Al Khaimah. And I think that's where RAC Tourism's worked incredibly well in recent years to big it up as a destination.
Yeah,
we've already seen people come. I was
just going to point that out. RAC Tourism actually has consistently over the years done a very good job promoting Ras Al Khaimah for tourism, for visitors, for all types of visitors, for people who are looking to go hiking or going to a beach club, chilling at some of the great hotels there. Okay, so let's jump into the next section. You said 150 million potential casino, the size of people who could visit Ras Al Khaimah. What's the estimate? What do you think this is going to contribute to the economy? How much do you think how much do you think this market is worth?
Look, I'm not going to know as much as Craig Billings, the CEO of Win, and he estimated the figure at anywhere between $5 and $8 billion.
Realistic?
Now, look, I mean, I don't know what the realistic thing is. I think it could be even more than that. There's a huge opportunity in terms of the sort of secondary industries that go along with this as well. As you say, things like verification industries, where they're going to need to have different forms of identity verification in these places. This could be a potential boom for those kind of industries. But let's look at this in detail. What does $5 to $8 billion look like? I mean, how does that stack up globally? Now, it's not going to touch perhaps Singapore or Macau, but this is going to be a market that is either the same size or bigger than Las Vegas. Can you imagine that? Right on the shores of the UAE.
What is the largest market, you think?
I'd probably say Singapore.
Singapore is bigger than Macau.
But I mean, look, there's official and there's unofficial,
yeah, of course.
Right?
Okay.
All of the world's sports betting markets, or most of them, are derived out of Southeast Asia, and it's in very grey area territory.
Yeah.
There's huge amounts of money that passes, which is undetectable, untraceable. So yeah, I mean, officially versus unofficially, regulated market versus unregulated markets. And I think that's an important thing to note is that the UAE is going down the regulated route. And it's hugely important that for things like player protections to make sure that things are above board, to make sure that the right people of the right age are being involved with these things. You know, we started the show off with a caveat. This is for a 21 plus audience, and very much that is the way things should be. Children should be protected. Vulnerable people should be protected. In unregulated markets, this doesn't happen. If you think about what's a popular TV program like Peaky Blinders, right? You've seen it. You've got the kids running between the people taking the bets. And that was very much commonplace in the UK until it was a regulated market. Yeah. William Hill, which I used to work for, when William Hill first set up his betting operation, it was illegal. He was operating an illegal betting market, and he was one of the people that almost drove the move towards things being regulated. Yeah. Because actually it was a huge advantage for William Hill because he was already established, and he realized his biggest threat came from people who were setting up illegal operations. And he thought, well, I can kill all the illegal operations by becoming a regulated business and make it really, really hard for people to set up. Yeah. So that's where a lot of this comes in. And it is going to be hard for businesses to set up in the UAE because they're going to have to jump through the loopholes of the legal frameworks here. But once they do, I mean, the world's your oyster.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I don't know if it's the correct parallel to draw in because you mentioned regulation, different markets, gray areas, right? The UAE, of course, is not someone that does not a brand, or Dubai as a brand, or the UAE overall in its public image around the world and its position is very visible and at the forefront. Hence, they're very risk averse to anything that's negative. Number one. Number two, they consistently over the past 20 years, 10 years, being a key financial hub and a trade hub, they've consistently tried to put in technology, measures, regulation, policy, frameworks across stakeholders to fight money laundering.
Yeah, I mean, they were upgraded on the FATFA list.
Exactly. Terrorism financing, etc. So just going back to, I think, 4 years, I really kind of see like a parallel with crypto.
Yeah, for sure.
Where people were interested in crypto, they were probably trading, buying, selling crypto, right? At that time where there was no framework available. Doesn't mean that they were doing something wrong, but it's just, it wasn't regulated. And now fast forward in 2025, you see almost all crypto or blockchain startups choosing to be regulated because they actually benefit from being regulated within the environment because it's better for business, it's better for the consumer, and it's better for the jurisdiction they're operating in.
Yeah, I think exactly. For businesses like Win coming in, they have an automatic advantage. Most people, or most individuals, most businesses, they can't set up a betting operation. They can't set up a wagering operation, a casino. It's really difficult to do that because you have to have incredibly specialized skills. You have to have proprietary platforms and technologies. You have to merge that and integrate it with verification. So just on an online basis, then you've got, from a physical basis, how many people or how many organizations, groups can establish the multi-million-dollar, multi-hundreds of millions of dollars of building a casino? Very, very few. So naturally, we're going to attract the big operators. They're going to be the ones who are going to be able to jump through the frameworks, the loopholes of, well, not the loopholes, it's exactly what they've closed with the frameworks, but the regulations of the GCGRA.
Okay, so perfect. In the report, it's predicted that a queue of bookmakers from global markets are going to be keen to launch in the UAE. So again, a hot take. Who do you think those players are going to be?
Wow. Look, I mean, straight away, you have to look at the regulators and who they might, want to work with or want to collaborate with. Win has been the first name through the door. But I expect the Vegas-based casinos to be the ones who are coming and setting up a physical presence. They're world class. They know how to do things, and it's not just a case of setting up the casino. It's they know how to bring world class entertainment. They know how to bring world class dining.
They're in the hospitality and entertainment business.
They are, and that is why I think these names are going to be the first ones into the UAE. From an online perspective, I think we could see businesses from Australia, from the UK, Europe coming in. Obviously, coming from a UK bookmaking background, there's some fantastic businesses there that have a huge opportunity of coming into the UAE. It could be massive for them, particularly if the scale and size of the market is so big. And we've seen with our analysis, there's a very similar level of popularity for potential popularity for sports betting between somewhere like the UK, maybe somewhere between 25 and 30% of people might be interested in sports betting there. We're going to see a similar amount here in the UAE. And although
as you mentioned, esports, football, two massive interests of young people, not only in the GCC but across the Middle East and North Africa. It's a huge market.
Yeah, we might see people coming in and flying in from other markets. Obviously, we're on the doorstep of South Asia. Potentially huge numbers of people coming in, massive volumes of tourists flying in, and given the amazing air routes into the UAE, you've got to think that there are going to be people who, for example, stop off on their way to Australia, flying from the UK. Oh, should we stop off in Ras Al Khaimah for 2 nights? Or on our way back from Australia, we'll go and have a quick spend of the change up the Aussie dollar into some dirhams and go and spend it in Ras Al Khaimah.
Yeah, or even like the seasonal tourism that you see when it's cold in Europe. People fly down here, enjoy the nice weather, spend their and according to the tourism numbers, tourist nights are increasing as well, where people would usually come for 1 or 2 nights. Those are now 7 nights. So it has a really big trickle down effect across all businesses, from the little cafe to the retail store to transportation companies and limousines, the malls, for example.
I've been saying it for years, though, Mir, that if betting or gaming came into the UAE, that the huge opportunity that would present for this region. When I moved here 8 years ago, there was rumors back then, 8 years ago, that maybe it might be coming in sometime soon. And then 2-3 years go by, and it hasn't happened. Yeah. But now the frameworks are in place, the regulations are in place, the operators are getting into gear, and it's coming.
Okay, good. Quickly, just before we wrap up, I think this is really important to address. Obviously, you have studied the GCGRA framework rules when you were putting this report together. There are strict advertising guidelines, there's strict marketing guidelines, there's licensing criteria. Given your experience in the UK, could you just quickly touch upon responsible gaming, ethics in the gaming industry, right? And why that matters specifically for, which is very important for this market, I think, as well, because it's it's not something that's familiar like it would be on the shores of Europe, right?
Yeah.
So there could be cultural nuances. There are people from all over the world.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'd start off with just from a personal perspective and seeing how things can go south for people. I worked in a betting shop in the UK, and I saw people coming in, and there were, I would say, 95% of those people in there were just coming in and having a few quid on the football. Just regular people, maybe coming in every day, but not spending that much money, 5 quid or 10 quid. But there were people who were coming in and spending more. Now, obviously, you're in a position there where you're taking money from people, and you're not quite sure whether that person should be spending that amount or not. Now, I come from a school of thought that we're all adults and we can all make our own decisions, but it's not quite strictly true, in that there are more people who are slightly more susceptible or vulnerable. Those people need protecting, and they need to have the right ability to opt out or seek help if they need to. Another aspect was in those environments, in those physical environments, they did actually offer an advantage versus online betting, because I knew when I was working in that shop, and I worked there for about 18 months, I knew most of the regulars who were coming in. So that guy who would typically place a £10 sports bet, I would know that if he was suddenly betting £100 or £200, maybe his behaviour had changed, and maybe that, and this happened whilst I was in that shop. Myself, my manager, at the time, we actually did have words with customers, being like, "Is everything okay? You seem to be betting more than usual," and you can make that judgment. When it's online betting, it is it's both a positive and a negative, in the fact that firstly, in, for example, the UK, it's very easy to have typically in the past set up a betting account. This has changed a little bit in recent years because there's been certain financial checks. But there was the ability to, okay, well, you've started betting with one firm, I'll just go and bet with another one. And you could just quite easily do that, versus in...
Yeah. So, sorry, that was interesting, something that you just said, financial check. So when you do sign up for a service, do they do some form of a, for example, over here we have the credit bureau, right?
Yes.
So they can see that, okay, you typically pay your electricity on time, you have a credit card, but that doesn't look like it's in default, or you haven't taken a massive loan, which could be kind of, I guess, trigger factors for somebody who's maybe on the wrong side of gaming.
Yeah, look, it all comes down to who's responsible for somebody's behaviour, and that is always the individual. But there can be certain things in place. So it depends upon the jurisdiction or the environment, but something like an affordability check has created a storm in the UK because people think it's overbearing.
Yeah.
Firms, these organisations who are taking the bets think it's governments overstepping their mark. Yeah. Here, it will be interesting to see what is decided in this area. But we all have UAE Pass, for example, or forms of identification, Emirates IDs. So that's kind of connected in that area. If for bank accounts, well, you probably have a local bank account. And that's where it will come down to whatever the regulator decides and what they think is the best way forward in that. But when it comes to what the rules and regulations are for marketing in the gaming environment here in the UAE, there are some really key things. The first one is that obviously terms and conditions need to be clearly stated. This is going to be something that every regulated firm will need to do. Similarly, when it comes to advertising and communication, they need to be very, very strictly targeted to the right age group. So no mass adverts on children's television programs as an extreme, right? It has to be very specific audiences that are targeted for things. Opt-in, opt-out communications. An individual needs to have expressly said, yes, I'm interested in that product in order to receive it. The other day, I received an email from the UAE lottery. Now, I know that that's only because I've signed up. If I hadn't signed up or expressed any interest, I wouldn't have been receiving that email. And there are various other aspects. I spoke about Arabic before. This is something where you cannot have anything in Arabic language at the moment, particularly when it comes to advertising for the gaming industry in the UAE. Same with social media ads. They have to be very targeted and specific. And I think how that is tackled, we'll start to see more environments where they are naturally 21 plus having some sort of association with gaming potentially. So an example might be 21 plus adult beach clubs that might be a perfect example of environment where they can definitely say that everybody in there is of the right age and they've already been verified when they go through the door. That is an example where they might be a collaboration, for example, with a brand that's looking to launch over here. That's just one small example. And I can see as we head towards the Win opening in Ras Al Khaimah, there'll be brands will start to have some subtle campaigns where they meet all of the GCGRA requirements, and they're not targeting people who are vulnerable or underage.
Okay. Well, I mean, really insightful. There's a lot of more things that we didn't cover, but that's all in the report. So I encourage everyone to head down to www.duke+mir.com/research. I hope. Yes, research. We'll drop the link also within the description for this episode. Just while I have you, John, quickly, kind of last 10 seconds, 15 seconds, what's the one insight or key takeaway you hope listeners will remember from our conversation on this topic today?
Look, the first one has to be gamble responsibly. That has to be the first thing that people need to be aware of if they're going to be involved with something which they're unfamiliar with. Understand what they're getting involved with before you even place a lottery bet, or you spin a roulette wheel, or in coming years go and play some blackjack at the casino. You have to fully understand what you're being involved with, and the simple rule of thumb is expect you're going to lose. So do not bet anything more than you can afford to lose. To some people, that might be 10 dirhams. To some people, that might be 10,000 dirhams. But that is a really strong way of looking at things. And if I was going to say one thing from a marketing perspective, it's, look, I'm a unicorn here, and I really want to work in this environment. It's something which I have a specialist knowledge of and a forte in. And I've been here for 8 years. Not many people have worked in the gaming environment for 15 years, and also we're living here for 8 years. It's
I've lived here all my life, John, and you're probably just I could count on one hand the number of people who work in horse racing. So I think, yeah, definitely you are a unicorn. Thank you so much, John. It's interesting and weird because usually you're the one driving the podcast, given your experience, not me. Hope you guys enjoyed yourself. Please follow, like, subscribe, Aeolian Sands. If you're interested in the report, we'll drop the link in the bio. If you want to get in touch with John, if you're within the gaming industry or you're just interested, you can follow him on LinkedIn. We'll drop that also in the description below. Thank you guys. Have a good evening.